Happy Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 64, titled Rough Summer of Fitz. I am your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks editor-in-chief, Nick Villano. Nick, I had a rough time because I forgot to save the copy on one of our streams, and it says something else. So I'm going to change that a little bit later. But we've got a big podcast tonight, all powered by Nova Product Design, exclusively streaming on the Primetime Radio Network. Nick, this is breaking news. We have first started about an hour ago. Kevin Weeks reporting that Lindy Ruff is the new Devils head coach, and the interim tag is taken off for Tom Fitzgerald. And I think you just said right before we went on air, Nick, that Darren Dreger has confirmed that. Is that true?
Darren Dreger retweeted Kevin Weeks and said that Lindy Ruff is the new head coach. I don't know if he got new information or he's going off of Kevin Weeks' information. But, I mean, obviously Dreger is more known as a newsbreaker than Weeks is. Weeks has broken news before, so I don't want to take any credit away from Weeks. But, it's obvious Weeks is more of an analyst more than anything, and he's very good at what he does. But, when you see that the normal names, the Bob McKenzie's, Elliot Friedman's, and of the ilk like that don't have that information, you always are just like, well, I trust it, but, then when somebody gives their stamp of approval, you're like, all right, it sounds like this is what it is, and now I'm sad.
Yeah, it's not 1996, people. That's the first thing that came into my mind. You know what I mean?
I mean, he's the Rangers, everything that he was in charge of with the Rangers were terrible at. He was in charge of the defense, and I said this on Twitter, don't let the Adam Fox ascension fool you. The Rangers' defense was terrible this year. And the Devils' defense was terrible this year, yet we brought in a guy who just coached defense to be terrible. And the Devils' main needs have a lot to do with fixing the defense and getting PK Subban back on track, and figuring out what the heck happened to Will Butcher, and figuring out what the heck Damon Severson is, and then filling all the holes around them. And I don't know. Oh, and Ty Smith. Ty Smith was a tire fire in the preseason last year. They sent him down to the WHL and he dominated. And I feel like if you send him to the AHL this year, he's going to do it again. But you got to wonder, is he going to come to the NHL and have doubts because of how they treated him last year? So you need a coach that's going to be able to help them through that. Oh, I don't know if you know this, Sam, but the Devils are going to have been off for at least 6 months, probably 7 months before they play another NHL game. And you need a really good coach to get the young players through that. And I don't think that that's what this is. I'm probably going to get some people upset with me because I don't like this hire. This hire is terrible. And I don't think that Gerard Gallant would have ever said yes. So we have to get Gallant out of our minds. But I think that they could have hired Laviolette. And Laviolette did take 3 teams to the Stanley Cup. And he has his own issues. He does come with his own issues, but he's much better than Ruff. He's a head coach in the NHL. And, I would have looked more at less established names and assistants that haven't been retread head coaches and people that we haven't learned 6 and 7 times that they don't work in the NHL. They try to be head. This just doesn't make any sense. This is a team led by Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes for the next decade at least. And you're bringing in a coach that has shown in the past that he can't take them to go to that extra step. In Buffalo, he was great. He was there forever. But at the end of his time there, he was there forever just because he was there. And I don't see that I don't see this as a good hire. I think that Lindy Ruff was the worst of all of the options. And I know you have to go get Dan Rice, a hockey writer, so we'll do that in a sec. But I just got to say that the Rangers fans are celebrating. The Rangers fans are celebrating New Jersey Devils hire. That is awful. They're happy. The people across the Hudson who get to go play in the return to play tournament against a team that they swept this year, and they got a possible MVP on their team. Now we take their assistant coach, and they're happy about it. They're celebrating our mistake.
Boy, has times changed, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Nick. We're having technical difficulties on my end. That's why I haven't got Dan yet. So,
okay, are we still on air?
Yeah, we're still on air. Oh yeah, we're still on air. But my computer froze, so that doesn't help the situation, right?
No, it doesn't. But I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna take up some time because I'm fuming, folks. I'm fuming, and I know you all out there. Everything I've heard right now hates this move. So I am literally. I think we're all on the same page here because it sounds like to me that for once the Devils have found a way to get all of the New Jersey Devils fans on the same page. Unfortunately, it sounds like that getting on the same page has actually been on something we hate. And I'm looking through the Facebook comments. Laviolette waiting for Tampa job from Raymond out there. If they get swept out again, Michael said, agree with Nick. Matt Junio, based on Nico's website, I found out that Nico's 194 pounds. I don't know what that has to do with what we're talking about. But, Matt, thanks for the information. I want to know what you think about Lindy Ruff, though. What do you think? I want you to react specifically to the fact that the Rangers fans are celebrating today. How does that make you feel that our biggest rival, the team that likes to play like there are – Big Brother and all this other BS, even though they've won one Stanley Cup in 100 years or whatever it is. How does it make you feel that they're celebrating the fact that we hired away their coach? That makes me infuriated. They know this guy more than anyone. And that's like, think about if the Rangers went and hired John Hines. We'd all be like, oh, you do not want to do that, but go ahead and do that. And I know that I think John Hines, looking back at it, I think John Hines got put in an impossible situation this year, and I hated how he coached this year, the ever-changing lines and some of the decisions he made. And I think that was the sign of a desperate coach, and I think that's why he made a lot of the moves he made. And it just didn't work because desperation usually doesn't work. But looking back at it, I had to ask you this. Would you rather have John Hines still than have Lindy Ruff coach this team? Because I think I'd say yes, I'd rather have John Hines just back. And that's how I feel about it. I don't want John Hines back, but I'd rather have John Hines back than this.
Yeah. And you know what? I'd rather have Dan Rice back on right now from the Hockey Writers on the Nova Product Design Hotline. We have Dan Rice, Devils beat writer. Dan, what are your thoughts on all this that has transpired in the last hour and a half?
First of all, I love the intro. That was a very, very smooth professional transition. That was A++ in my book. Second of all, thanks for having me on again. I think I heard at the tail end of what you were talking about there, and about you'd rather have Hines. At this point, I mean, we've already been there and done that. So let's just, that whole ship has sailed. Hines is gone. Shero's gone. It's time for a fresh start, right? I mean, for the most part, Taylor Hall is gone. A bunch of other pieces are gone. So I guess I'm probably in the minority here, but I don't really have a problem with the hiring.
What?
It's not the no-nonsense coach that I would have preferred or thought they were going to sign. But at the end of the day, you're bringing in a guy that's 6th all-time in wins, 700-plus wins. I mean, the guy knows how to coach. He took some really, really, gritty Buffalo teams about as far as they could go, and they, maybe the teams right after the lockout, maybe they were one of the best teams in the league. But that team that went to the '99 finals, I don't think that was one of the best teams in the league that year. I mean, I just don't, and to see what he got out of them. Now, granted, that was 20 years ago, however many years ago. But yeah, that was the Dominic Hasek era. I mean, he had a great goaltender and got them within a toe in the crease of maybe winning the Stanley Cup. Who knows? But no, I don't hate the hire. I've always been more of a let's wait and see and let it play out, and let's actually see the product on the ice before we all lose our minds over something that we don't know how it's going to play out. And I guess in a way, it's a silver lining that they do have so long of a layoff until we see them on the ice again. It gives him a chance to really get to know the players if he doesn't already, and gives them a chance to know what he wants and vice versa. And obviously, he has a connection with Fitzgerald. They were both on a part of the '96 Florida Panthers team that went to the Cup final. I think Ruff was an assistant, and Fitzy was, I want to say, alternate captain, maybe captain. So there's a little bit of issue there, and that's maybe why this leaned in that direction. And maybe the other candidates, maybe they weren't on board with the way that things were being presented and being sold to them, or maybe this is just the guy that they felt interviewed the best. Until we hear from everybody involved, we really don't know. It's all just hearsay.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I do think that there's some smoke to that, or some fire to that smoke. That we all saw the Larry Brooks piece a couple of weeks ago, where he, it basically showed that the Devils had multiple people interviewing multiple people, and certain people were getting interviews from certain people, and things like that. Do you think something like that might turn off an established coach like Peter Laviolette or a Gerard Gallant?
I mean, I could totally see that turning somebody off. But I mean, between us all, there's no secret that the front office is kind of a cluster fork, for lack of a better term, right now. Nobody really knows what's going on and who's running what, and who has the final say on certain things. And another connection that just popped to me too is Mike Greer, who was an assistant under the previous regime. I would assume he gets kept. He was a guy that played for Lindy Ruff in Buffalo. He was on those. I think he was on the 04-05 team, and if he 05-06, and if he wasn't, I know he was on the team back in '99. So, but maybe he was still with Edmonton. But regardless, he played for Ruff, so he probably has as much knowledge of him and insight about him than anybody else. But I'm sure that the Devils brought Greer in and asked him his opinion on Ruff and those kind of things. And I know it's not I know I'm not saying maybe what you guys expected or the in vogue thing to do is to overreact to this all right now. But let's wait and see how it plays out at least, and let's hear what he has to say. If I'm assuming there'll be some kind of press conference at some point. I don't know exactly the schedule, but I did hear that the announcement will be tomorrow morning for sure.
Well, Dan,
I take as a personal.
Oh, sorry, Nick. Dan, we have you on because we always want to get the other point of view, and you did. I mean, you did a great job explaining that. But at the same time, and as I opened up the podcast, I'm kind of like, are we back in 96 right now? Like there are other coaches out there, but why Lindy Ruff? That's my initial thought.
Yeah, and I totally get that point of view. If I had to rank who my preferences would have been, not that means anything. I thought Gallant was clearly the guy for the job. Laviolette second, and then and then from there you could go a bunch of different ways. But to me, those were the two guys that I thought had the best resume entering this process. Their more recent body of work definitely speaks for itself. And maybe they got to a point too where they didn't want to be part of a team that they thought was maybe rebuilding, or they didn't agree with the direction that ownership wants to move things in. So who knows what all that. I definitely wasn't keen on the idea of a guy like Mike Babcock coming in, and I don't think he would have been a candidate. I don't know if he interviewed. I haven't seen that anywhere, and if I did, I don't remember it. But I like this move, at least for now. They had a lot of time to do the due diligence, as the popular phrase is, and I'm sure they explored all the options, and this is what they came up with, and at least it gets people talking about it again for a couple of days until some other news breaks.
Yeah, obviously, the CBA is like the big thing this week and everything. Do you think the Devils waited until there was a new CBA before they made a decision? Do you think this decision's been in place for a long time?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they waited. I think that's probably just coincidental. It kind of came out of left field where there hasn't been really much news, and to all of a sudden announce it now. I think maybe if they did settle on it, it was probably before the holiday weekend, and they wanted to maybe let everybody, take a couple of days, see if this is exactly what they want to do, make sure that he's definitely still interested. These kind of things, maybe they did offer it to him before the weekend and say, touch base with us after the weekend and let us know if this is something you want to do. That's the scenario I could see probably how it played out.
Yeah, here's my deal, is that I don't know where else Laviolette is going to be able to coach. I don't know who else is hiring Laviolette. So I don't understand why there's a guy out there. And maybe he asked for too much. Maybe he overplayed his hand. That's definitely a possibility. And maybe the Devils were sticking to their price and Lindy Ruff came to their price. But you did bring up a lot of really interesting points that I didn't really – I haven't had time to really tie those things together about how many past connections this team has. And if they wanted to keep a lot of their assistants, I know they really like Greer, and maybe they wanted to keep Nasruddin on staff. If they could talk to Greer and bring him and get him to keep the staff that they like, and Tom Fitzgerald already has a connection to him, then maybe that's why they felt the need to trust Ruff like they did. But at the same time, that nepotism, or whatever you want to call it, I guess nepotism isn't the right word, but that familiarity and sticking with familiarity, I am just curious if you think that if that's what they did, if they went with the guy they know, I think that's also what Ray Shero did with John Hines, because he brought the guy from the Penguins organization. Is that something that's worrying to you, that they might be making the same mistake?
Yeah, the thought is definitely crossed my mind within the last 2 hours or whatever it's been. And I think what you mentioned too is possibly very true too. Maybe they did price themselves out. These other candidates. Maybe Laviolette wanted too much money. I mean, the Devils are still paying Shero, right? And they're paying him to not work for them. I think that's how that still goes. I know they're not paying Hines anymore because he took another job, but money is tight right now, I'm sure, and there's no fans sitting in any stands anywhere, so that could be an issue too. It's not that foreign of a concept. maybe a guy like Gallant really wanted a lot of money, and maybe he wanted to be the highest paid coach in the league. We don't know those things. We haven't heard any of that, at least anyway. It's just something definitely interesting to think about, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there are factors that we don't know, and I don't know if we'll ever get those. All I know right now is that Lindy Ruff sounds like he's the head coach of the New Jersey Devils. It sounds like the season might start in December, which would be nice. But I don't know if I trust that. That seems like a really short offseason for a Cup champion. But either way, last words on what your thoughts on the Lindy Ruff signing and this is coming out.
Yeah, and kind of like I said at the top when I first came on, the guy with 736 or 735 wins or whatever it is, sixth all time. He's won a Coach of the Year. He's won 50 wins with two different teams. He's been to a Stanley Cup final as a coach and as a head coach and as an assistant. It's not like they brought in some guy who has no NHL coaching experience and was coaching at Wilkes-Barre Scranton. It's a guy who's been around the block and like I said at the beginning too, like I don't really have a problem with it. I'm more of a wait and see. I kind of, in a way, I'm kind of intrigued by it, maybe more than I would have been some of the other guys. Just because it wasn't the odds-on favorite or the number one choice of the masses to be the guy. And hey, for the Yankee fans out there, maybe he's like a Joe Torre who, was never able to win it in other places, and Joe Torre comes to the Yankees, and all of a sudden he wins a bunch of titles because he's got all these young kids that all develop at the same time and reach their peak. That'd be like a dream scenario, but it's something maybe to keep in mind in the back of our minds, at least for as this thing progresses and as we move into the not even into the prime yet of guys like Nico and Jack Hughes' career. So let's see how it all plays out once they actually hit the ice. Until then, as my friend Abby likes to say, overreact accordingly.
Well, Dan, I thank you for coming on. I know this is short notice, and I appreciate you jumping on with us and giving your thoughts on Lindy Ruff and maybe talking us off the ledge. But I'm probably going to yell a little bit more once you get off.
Anytime, guys. Anytime. Thanks for having me on. Stay safe out there. Mask up and continue on with your overreaction.
Thank you, Dan. That no is Dan Rice of the Hockey Writers. The Hockey Writers. Nick, I got to tell you, your internet feed doesn't even like this move either. I could see it. I could see it just shaking its bandwidth because it's so mad. Probably it could feel your should I say your frustration, but I think it's calmed down. It looks good.
Yeah, it looks like it's. I don't know what I did. I tried to do stuff on the other computer that's connected to the Wi-Fi, and it looks like it calmed it down a little bit. I don't know how or why or. I'm not the technology guy. I'm the yell at loud.
So are you telling me that you went on the Primetime Radio Network Direct Connect line instead of your internet and it started to work?
I don't know what any of that means, but sure. We'll just say yes for podcast point making.
Yes.
But since I'm here and clear, real quick before we get Julie on, Julie Robenhymer is about to be on the Let's Go Devils podcast, and we thought we were going to have a nice little conversation where she yelled at me about my opinion on Jake Sanderson, but apparently I'm going to have to yell first about Lindy Ruff. I love Dan, you know that. I think that his opinion, he has smart opinions, and he tends to he has a wait and see approach. I don't have a wait and see approach. I have this is a bad idea. I tell you when I think things are good ideas. I tell you when I think things are bad ideas. And I will absolutely, positively tell you when I'm wrong. And I will gladly, with all of my heart and soul, tell you that I got this wrong. If Lindy Ruff comes in here and he makes the Devils even a playoff contender, I would appreciate. So if we're back to the mid-2000s Devils, where we're making the playoffs every year, winning around every so often, that'd be cool. I'd be cool with that right now. The expectations are so horrendously low, and I'm still disappointed. Like, I have no expectations for this team because I'm like, all right, let's wait and see. Let's hope something happens. And then the owners come out and say they want to win now when they fire Ray Shero, and they go and hire Lindy Ruff, who hasn't won now in a long time. Listen, I didn't, like I said, I've said before, I didn't like Laviolette, Vita Laviolette, but I was getting reserved to the fact that it might happen. I was like, okay, at least we can do something with this. I thought he'd bring a nice culture here, and he'd do some of the things that the Devils do need. Maybe his on-ice performance isn't where it's been, but he knows how to control a locker room, and this Devils team might have enough talent to take him places. I don't know what Lindy Ruff brings to this locker room. Are they going – and if they brought him here because he's willing to do everything the Devils want in terms of on-ice product, in terms of listening to the analytics, in terms of hiring the assistant coaches, in terms of doing what they want with the players, what's the point? Honestly, just keep Elaine Nasruddin. If you're going to do that, why would you string Elaine Nasruddin along for as long as you have, just to hire a coach that's worse than him? I don't understand it. I don't, because I thought Nasruddin – he had some issues with getting the right on-ice product out there, and I thought some of his disciplinary decisions were wrong. I thought sitting Jesper Bratt was a terrible decision. I thought some of the ways he built the lines, taking Jack Hughes and putting him on the wing, thought was a bad decision. Putting Miles Wood in the first line, I think it was a bad decision. But to be fair, it was his first year, and he just got swung into the thing, and – you know, he coached up Mackenzie Blackwood, or maybe Mullance. Somebody coached up Mackenzie Blackwood to be to where he was. Corey Schneider finally bounced back, but again, I don't know how much you can take that. You got to take that with a grain of salt at this point. I just don't understand why this was the choice. This was the word. Honest to goodness, would have rather had John Stevens hired as the head coach of the Devils than what they did. I don't understand why they made this move. And trust me, I understand that me saying this is not going to get me in good graces with some people that we talk to. And honestly, I know that, and that's okay, because I don't want to ever tell you people that anything besides what I actually feel. And what I actually feel is that this is a bad decision. I feel like Lindy Ruff is the wrong coach for this team. We need somebody who's going to come in here, play fast and aggressive. You got, people like Miles Wood, who's been lost for the past couple of years, and I don't think John Hines ever knew how to really coach Miles Wood and coach him up, and I thought maybe that's why Nasruddin was doing things with him that he did. If you remember, the best year of Miles Wood's career happened I think it happened a lot because he got benched the first night of the year, and I thought that was a bad decision too. And maybe that's a motivating factor that I don't understand, is sitting your best guys. I thought when they sat Nikita Gusev, I thought it was a terrible decision. And they said that it was to go watch the game with Patrick Elias, and he did play better. But I don't think he played better because he sat in the box with Patrick Elias, because they sat him for way too long. I think if he just watched one or two games, and honestly, what's the difference between – okay, I understand the difference between watching a game live and watching a game on tape, but I feel like a good coach is going to be able to tell them those things and give them that direction through the video and through the their old plays, that player's old plays, and other players' old plays, and see where those mistakes are happening without them having to miss NHL games from a $4.5 million player who just won an MVP in a competing league. I just don't understand this decision on 1,000 fronts, and I don't know why. And I'm excited for tomorrow. Hopefully, the Devils will hold a conference call and a press conference of some kind. I mean, obviously, they can't hold a typical press conference, but hopefully, they'll hold a Zoom situation so we can kind of get some answers. But I need something, Sam.
I need something, but I'm going to really like our next guest from EP Rinkside, Miss New Jersey 2005. She knows her stuff when it comes to college hockey prospects. Please welcome to the podcast, Julie Robenhymer. Julie, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I'm great. I've prepared myself to be yelled at.
Listen, I don't yell at the guests. I yell on Twitter because I'm an angry Twitter user, but who isn't anymore, right? Is that fair?
Me? I'm not an angry Twitter user. There are
That's
plenty
fair.
of
Yeah, it's kind of my shtick, so I got to stick to the shtick. But we will get to the I don't want to say arguments. I thought we were civil, but we'll get to the conversations we had about Jake Sanderson in just a minute. I do want to get your quick reaction. Kevin Weeks of NHL Network is reporting that Lindy Ruff is going to be the next New Jersey Devils head coach. Obviously, we haven't had time to really dig into a lot of the numbers, or you obviously haven't had time to see what he's done with young players. But based on your initial reactions, what do you think of this hire, especially for the young players and the young players coming up for the Devils?
Well, I think the biggest issue in terms of the Devils coaching staff, obviously recently, has been a lack of experience. And if you look at all the experience he has, he definitely fixes that. And, it's one of those things where I loved John Hines. I loved Elaine Nazardine. I think they were both very thorough, very open-minded, willing to listen to new ideas and try new ways of doing things. Like they were insatiable students, and like they just always wanted to continue to learn and never felt that they were that they knew it all, like that there wasn't something for them to learn or somebody for them to learn from. One of the things I don't know, I know I've talked about it before, but I don't know if you guys have, but in the summer, they used to host a symposium where they would get a whole bunch of coaches together from a whole bunch of different levels. So pro coaches and not just NHL coaches, but like AHL coaches too. They'd have college coaches. They'd have youth coaches in the New Jersey area. And they would get together and talk about different techniques that they learned and methods and everything, just to share ideas, to come together and share ideas. So they were always looking for things, but part of that is because there wasn't anybody on staff that had done it before. So it was always a question mark on the staff. How do you coach a playoff team when nobody's been to the playoffs before, either on the coaching staff or on the ice? Like, how do you do that? And so this solves one of those issues. I know there's a lot of concern about the defensive side of, the game, and especially the Devils team and the style of play that Lindy supports. But he's kind of the mindset that you can outscore your mistakes. So if this team is leaning towards the offensive side like they are, and they feel that they can do enough to support the back end with that, then, go for it. Let's see what happens. Although I will say this, I know a lot of people are like, he's old. Age is just a number, but B, a lot of people are saying, like, if the rumors are true and if the Devils really did reach out to Richard Gromberg, you know, you don't hear that. And then suddenly that coach gets re-upped for 2 years and they already still have a year on their contract. Like, that doesn't happen if it's just a rumor, you know, like they love him in Zurich for good reason. He did an amazing job. He took a team that was not quite last, but pretty darn close to it last year, to winning the regular season this year. And it's a shame that we didn't get to see what they did in the playoffs, because I think they would have been a total juggernaut. So, you know, maybe I'm purely speculating. Maybe this is just a stopgap until Gromberg becomes available. You know, like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot that goes into this. But, you know, I too am in the wait and see camp. We'll see what happens. If it doesn't work out, there's another coach available.
Julia, I love that point. I think Gromberg would have been a great coach for the Devils now. Obviously, he had, it's been widely reported that he had no NHL out in his current deal, which goes through next season. My hope was that maybe if they canceled the Switzerland season, maybe that would make him available. But obviously that's not how this all worked out. But if Lindy Ruff is a stopgap to get a guy like Richard Gromberg, well, let me ask you this. If that is what it is, and Gromberg is here for the short term, he is 60 years old. You know, he's getting close to that age. If he's here for the short term, do you think that they should say that?
No. No. And here's the other thing. Let me just tell you, you may want answers, but that doesn't mean you're going to get them. You know, like, the GM is and the owners are under no obligation to explain anything to anybody except their staff. That's it. So, you know, like, you can sit there and, like, demand answers, and you can ask all the questions you want. Like, that's another thing that drives me bananas is when people say, oh, the reporters aren't asking the right questions. It was like, no, trust me. We asked essentially the same question in multiple ways, trying to get something out of them. And if they don't want to tell you, they don't have to tell you. They're under no obligation to outright answer a question. Like, there's nothing that says they have to tell you why they hired him. There's nothing that says they have to explain their decision to you. Like, that's not a thing. They don't have to do that. So you could get, like, oh, we thought he was a great coach, blah, 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 something super vanilla, and you're going to have to deal with it because that's just the way it is. So, you know, if you know, again, age is just a number. If you can do something, you can do something. And one of the things that Lindy Ruff is very highly respected by people in the hockey community. He has been there. He has done that. He has found success. He has proven longevity. You know, like, things in Buffalo didn't necessarily fall apart because of him. You know, there was a whole crew of Mets in that, you know, like, he was just part of it. And then the same thing with Dallas, you know, they just wanted to go in a different direction. It wasn't necessarily, you know, you're a horrible coach, we're going to get somebody else. It's just like, you know what, we're going to just shift course right here. But he is very highly respected. And that alone should be enough for fans to give him a chance to show what he can do. And, you know, I sit there and I say, look, if he can't do it, great. We'll take a top 5 draft pick. No problem. You know, like, I don't understand. You kind of win either way. You know, either you're good or you build for the future. Like, there's definitely, I guess, a reason to give him a chance and a reason to be hopeful.
Yeah, so you give me the perfect professional transition here because, we're talking about building for the future, and the future is kind of your forte. You get to look at those pieces that are going to be good for the future. And I know a lot of the conversation I've been having with Devils fans before the last 2 hours has been those future pieces and what they're going to look like. I know that the Devils have talked about win now. I know that's something that the ownership has said when they announced the replacement of Ray Shero. And I think that they do have some pieces that if they work out, they could still win now with those young pieces. One of the pieces I do want to ask you about specifically, because I feel like he's been completely forgotten in this. And last year he was one of the saviors of this franchise, is Jesper Boquist. Jesper Boquist obviously didn't have the season we all thought he was going to have, but I also thought that was partially by design based on how they held him through when they didn't have to send him back to Europe, and then they sent him down to the AHL. He dominated the AHL. He got some NHL time. So I want to start with him. I want to start with Jesper Boquist, and I want to ask you what you think his future looks like and whether last year changed any opinions you might have had on him.
No, I still think he's bomb.com. So, he's still as slippery as ever. He's still a great skater. He still has tremendous vision. He still has a ridiculous wrist shot. There's a lot to like about Jesper Boquist and what he can do. And listen, we all knew that it was going to be a struggle for him because there was no in between. He was either with the team or he wasn't. And they wanted him with the team. So they knew it was a year of transition. It's almost like the conversation I had about Lucas Raymond playing on a really good Frölunda team at the start of the year. He had very limited minutes because they were managing him. He was 17 playing on a men's team. And eventually he asked if he could go down and play with the junior team just so he could get some minutes before the U20 Four Nations tournament in November so that he could potentially earn a spot on the World Junior team, which he did. He was excellent, So it's one of those things where it's unfortunate that Jesper wasn't able to spend the entire season in the AHL, because if that had happened, I don't think you would have even thought to ask me the question if my opinion of him had changed. So it's just the situation and the circumstances that he was in that didn't allow him to shine. But as he continues to develop his game and physically develop, put on some strength, because, he's a little wispy. Once he gets a little sturdier on his skates at the NHL level, you will see everything that we've seen the past, 2 to 3 years out of Jesper, but you'll see it at an NHL level. So I'm super excited about his potential.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on Jesper Boquist. I don't think that I should need to ask the question, but I've seen who the fans are bringing up when they talk about instant contributing prospects, and he's almost never on the list. And I was just very confused by that. So I did want to ask you, since you have that expert opinion on those young guys, and I'm glad that we can agree on something. I appreciate that, Julie. But one of the prospects that I'm sorry, you go.
Well, just before we leave Jesper, I will say the reason fans are saying that is because fans seem to forget that players actually develop, and that not everybody breaks into the NHL as a superstar in their first year. And I find that one, mediocre or one challenging season for a young player, and a lot of fans are very quick to be like, okay, they're not good enough. Who else is left? And that's not fair. That's not fair to the players. That's not how this works. There are many players who don't make it until they're 25, and then they kick butt and dominate. So, like you sit there, you look at a guy like even Blake Coleman. We all love Blake Coleman, right? But he wouldn't have come out he didn't, join until he was I don't think he became an NHL until he was 22. He played at Miami for quite a while, at least 3 years. I don't know if he played 4, but at least 3. So, I don't understand why fans are so quick to oh, he's a bust. he's useless. Like, there's so many awful things that I hear about these prospects, and it breaks my heart, because if somebody gave up on you when you were 22, how would you have handled that? Like, that's not fair in any way. So that's just my note on why I think fans are very quick to just cut ties and move on to the next shiny object, when really that prospect just needs a little polish.
Well, as somebody who went back to college at 22 and with a 1.2 GPA and with the over a 3.0, I understand that comparison that you're making. But I do want to ask one quick thing, just because you mentioned it and you've talked about just a lot. People bring getting the ice and the sheet, and we also saw this when Takeda Goose here. How overplayed, or is that actually these players have to get used to?
I'm going to have to ask you to repeat it again, because it was a little spotty.
Sorry about that. I think that is getting. I want to ask about the size of the ice sheet, the fact that it's different in Europe than in this.
Yeah. Okay. So the size of the ice sheet, it doesn't really make a difference in the actual skill and the talents necessary to be successful over here. What it does make a difference in is your reaction time. You just have more time to think in Europe. And, but that is also added to the fact that the players just simply don't move as fast in Europe. So a lot of people say that it's because of the small ice. That is a contributing factor, but it's more so that the players in the NHL, I mean, again, we sit here and we say the NHL is the best league in the world. Well, if it's the best league in the world, then you should be able to realize that the players are smarter, they're faster, they're stronger, and they're more skilled. So, you know, even though a player is really good over in Europe, that doesn't mean that he is going to be up to par over here, at least not right away. Like, there's still an adjustment period of not only playing with, but playing against players who are faster, stronger, smarter. You know, they think quicker. There's an adjustment to the mental part of the game. And in that, I mean, just like the hockey IQ, the decision making, what's the word I'm looking for? How decisive you are on the ice with what you see. And that 1 second of hesitation could be the one that, you know, knocks you flat on your butt and causes a turnover. So those are the things that to me make the difference. Yes, the size of the ice is a contributing factor, but to me, it's a very small contributing factor. The bigger part is just that the players over here are smarter. They move faster. You know, when you do make a mistake, they are skilled enough to make it count.
So I do want to, you know, we're coming to the end of your time here, and you've been very generous with it. So I do want to ask just a couple more about the prospects, just to kind of get this in. I wanted to ask specifically about Nolan Foote and Yanni Kokkonen. Nolan Foote's somebody I really liked, and I loved when they got him in the trade for Blake Coleman. Obviously, it hurt losing Coleman, but I love Nolan Foote as a prospect. And Yanni Kokkonen is somebody that everybody else has been in love with. Can you tell me your thoughts on those prospects, and whether you think that maybe they're ready to be NHL players, or do you think that they still need some seasoning?
I would say that they still need some seasoning, but that doesn't mean they couldn't be seasoned in the NHL. So with Yanni Kokkonen, I love his skating. I love his compete level. Like he just wants to be in everything. Like, he just wants to be in everybody's business on the ice. And I love that about his game. He also has a big frame. And I think he could, get stronger. And once that happens, he will be more effective with what he's able to do on the ice, but he definitely has a lot of offensive upside. In terms of Nolan Foote, I obviously really like him. I think he is ridiculously intelligent on the ice. I think he is way better in a subtle way than a lot of people give him credit for. Again, everybody is looking for goals. And if we talk about Jake Sanderson, we'll talk about this too. Everybody wants all the goals, but you know what? Somebody has to do the hard work, and they have to be really, really good at it and do it at an elite level. And Nolan is one of those guys. I don't think Hockey Canada would have been as successful as they were at the World Juniors without Nolan Foote. So he's a difference maker, whether he's on the score sheet or not. And that is a player that I would be excited to have on my team.
Is there any prospects that you think can make the roster next year that we haven't mentioned?
I mean, there's a lot of question marks here in terms of when the season's going to start. What's going to happen with these prospects in the meantime? There's a lot up in the air. And, I had a brief conversation with Fitzy about this, and, he's like, we want our players to play whatever that looks like, we want them to play. So there's a lot of up in the air-ness, do I think Ty Smith has a shot? Sure, absolutely. I definitely think he has a shot to, make the NHL. There's things that I want to see from him, before I put that in pen instead of pencil. But, he's the guy. There's other guys too that are very exciting. There's two Russian guys that I really like. One is Arseny Gritsuk, and he is actually going to be playing for Team Russia. They're doing a Russian hockey showcase in August in Sochi, and so he's going to be on the team for the U20s. He's a player you should be excited about. He could definitely make the Russian World Junior team as well. And a guy that was on the Russian World Junior team in January was Daniel Misyul. He's a defenseman, and he's another guy. He's very wiry. He's tall and skinny. And if he's able to put on some muscle and put on some strength, man, he is really good. I loved watching him play. He covers a lot of ground. So, there is definitely a lot to be excited about. I liked Nikola Paschik in the international games that I saw him in. He was very good. I know you're pretty high on a lot of the Ottawa 67 guys. They're obviously, had a lot of success this year as well and proven themselves as players. So there's a lot in the Devils pipeline. Even in the AHL, there is a lot there to work with. To say who could make it, that is just such a great area right now, given that there may be people not here. For example, Jesper Boquist may spend the entire year with Brynäs. You don't know. We don't know what's going to happen and where people are going to be and all that jazz. So there's just a lot up in the air in that sense.
No, I definitely agree, and that's the crazy part. But I'd be remiss if we brought you on and then I didn't have you talk about the man that I've railed about him on here. I've railed about him on Twitter, but it seems like more and more people are talking about their love for Jake Sanderson. I feel like he's the most talked about draft prospect in the whole entire process, and that might have a little bit to do with the fact that there's no team yet for Lafreniere. But you were in the camp that you were for Jake Sanderson. So tell me why I'm wrong. Why do you think that this would be a good pick for the Devils? And then where do you think, say the Devils have that 7 and then another top 10 and then the 17. Tell me where you think that the Devils would be smart to take him.
Okay, again, there's some gray area in terms of where to take him because there are, this is something that I like to talk about with prospects. I'm totally going to go over my time here, but you'll appreciate it. So here's the thing. We all sit there and say, there are 217 or 15, something like that, prospects selected in the draft. And most fans think that every single one of those players is on a team's draft board. And it's not true. Most teams that I know of go into the draft with about 100 to 120 players on their draft board, on their individual draft board, which means there are players that are selected that this team has said no to for one reason or another. They didn't even, I can't say they didn't consider them because they did consider them, but they were crossed off. It wasn't like, if he's available, we'll see. No, it was do not draft. So there are people in the first round that teams have on their do not draft list. Let that sink in. I'm going to repeat it for everybody. There are players that will be drafted in the first round that are on teams do not draft list. So if you get down to because the Devils are in that 7th spot, and I keep trying to say this to people, they're like, I'll take any one of, Holt, Raymond, and Rossi, or whatever combination you want to throw in there. Well, you know what? What if none of those players are available? What if they've all been picked over and you get the leftovers? Do you want that leftover or do you want fresh meat? So it's one of those things where you have to consider, do you want the best of the rest of the forwards, or, do you want to go for a top flight defenseman who is a game changer, who can be a franchise defenseman? Because that's what I think Jake Sanderson can be. I think Jake Sanderson he's much better, but in terms of his ability to dominate a game from a defensive standpoint is Chris Pronger. So I think he's going to develop into his body. He plays physical already. He covers a ton of ground with his wingspan. I feel like he can get, from side to side on the ice in 3 strides. He can cover that much ground on the blue line. It's crazy pants how he does that. He is amazing in the neutral zone. His transition game is, in my opinion, second to none in this draft class. He is so subtly good. You really have to be paying attention to his game to fully appreciate it. You can't just wait for him to catch your eye and get your attention, because that's not his game. That's not how he plays. He is just so reliable and consistent, and he just does everything at an exceptionally high level. My favorite line from Seth Appert, who is the coach of the U.S. National Team Development Program these past 2 years, is he calls him a savage defenseman, because he is just beast mode all the dang time. He relishes the hard work. He wants to be in that position and wants to be relied upon in that way. And I spoke with him at the Five Nations tournament in November in Sweden, and he was so wonderful, just a wonderful human being just in general. The Devils like to draft character guys. Well, he's one of them. He totally qualifies. And afterwards, after the interview was over, he said to me, Julie, I heard from one of the other coaches that you really liked Moritz Seider and you thought he was going to be a top 10 pick. I said, hell yeah, I did. And he's like, what did you see from him that helped him move from a late first round to a top 10 pick in your eyes? And when he asked me that, I thought that was so ridiculously smart of a 17-year-old to ask. He is saying, I'm projected to be in the late first round. What do I need to do to be in the top 10? Like, that's what he was asking me. He wasn't asking me what I thought about Moritz Seider. He's, in his own way, he was asking, how do I do this? How do I make that impression? And I talked a lot about Moritz's decisiveness, how he made his decisions and he acted immediately. There was no hesitation. He had ultimate confidence in himself and what he was doing, which is why he was able to be so successful for Mannheim last year, and then have the success that he did with the men's national team for Germany at the World Championship. And that is the exact same thing that you saw out of him throughout the course of the year. He got better and better and better. He got more consistent. He grew in his confidence. He became more decisive. He was that go-to reliable player that did his job incredibly well. And the only thing that he's really lacking, and that's not to say that he doesn't have offense, he just doesn't have those like super flashy offensive numbers. Like, he certainly contributes. Part of it too is the fact that this year's national team development program wasn't very offensive in general. Like, there was no scoring going on. They were definitely a muck and grind and loose puck find and just, figure out a way to win this one, boys, kind of team this year. So I think that is also a reflection of his, mediocre offensive stats. But the one thing that I would love to see out of him is a ridiculous slap shot. And I know that he's working on it. I had a conversation with him about it, and he's like, I have to, he wants it to be heavier. But the challenge with that is in putting some more oomph behind it, he's losing his accuracy. So he needs to obviously work on it and get some reps in, which I'm sure he's doing in this offseason, to improve that and get his offensive numbers higher, which is going to be great. He's going to North Dakota. They are, a factory for defensemen. So I'm very excited to see what he will do there. And then just the college game in general will be helpful for him. Hopefully there will be some sort of season for them to play this year. But I'm excited for him. I think he can develop into something very, very special, something that you cannot get at a good price. We'll preface that. You cannot get it for a good price in free agency. So if you have an opportunity to draft a player like him, I vote you do it, because in 2 or 3 years, you're going to be like, damn, I really need a defenseman.
Julie, this has been one of the most passionate interviews we had on the Let's Go Devils podcast, and I've had a lot of fun tonight. So I'm not going to disagree with you on Sanderson. You made a lot of really good points, and I do like smart players. I like high IQ players. That's one of the reasons why I really like Hughes last year. I thought he was one of the high IQ, obviously everybody likes Jack Hughes, but when we were talking about the Hughes-Kakko, I saw that a lot of that high intelligence on the ice for Hughes. So, I'm going to go back. I'm going to look a little bit more. I think what I need to do a little bit more is kind of see some more full games. I'm seeing a lot of highlights, and a lot gets lost in translation, even when you're looking at the good highlights. So maybe I'll look at full shifts, full games, and
yeah, when you watch, pay special attention to his play in the neutral zone and the little things that he does to force turnovers. Because he does. He has the capability of bowling guys over, but he is so good with just like a little subtle, stick check to poke the puck away, and one of his teammates comes in and scoops it up, and like, he is just so subtle. So watch the details of his game, because like I always say this about defensemen too, like you either notice a defenseman for all the right reasons, which are all the offensive reasons, all of the wrong reasons, which is the lack of defensive responsibility reasons. And then there's defensemen that you don't notice at all because they are that good at their job. And that is Jake Sanderson. He is not going to be your super, flashy highlight reel. He is just steady, reliable, effective workhorse. I love it.
Well, Julie, this has been great. I really appreciate having you on. It sounds like we're getting a draft date soon, sometime in October. So you might be having me trying to get you to come on again come October, talk a little draft. How's that sound?
Well, anytime, guys. Happy to do it.
Thanks,
All
Julie.
Right, that's Julie Robenhymer. Thank you so much. Make sure you read her. She's at EP Rinkside, and just follow her on the social medias, and she'll tweet out her link. She's just one of the better prospect analyzers that I've seen, and she's one of ours, which is always great, Sam. I love having as many people talking about the Devils as possible, and to have somebody who's got such a thumb when it comes to the young players. And there's players that I wouldn't even think to look more into until she brings them up. So, she's just doing a stupendous job of doing all that. The disagreement on Jake Sanderson aside, but again, she's not the only one. A lot of very smart analytics people are coming out, and not only are they saying that Jake Sanderson is going to be drafted in the top 10, not only are they saying that Jake Sanderson is going to be drafted ahead of Jamie Drysdale, and I'm not saying that Julie's saying that. I'm just saying there are others who are saying that, but they're also saying that he's just the best defenseman in this draft. So I feel like maybe I need to do a little bit more homework. I did some homework, and I thought I did it. Thought I did the homework, and I thought I gave the New Jersey Devils fans the my best possible opinion. But there's a lot of opinions I respect out there that are saying that Sanderson is the guy. So maybe I got to change my tune.
You don't want to mess with Julie. She's from South Jersey. Southpaw, South Jersey. It's from Rocky.
So, Sam, speaking of changing our tune, I think we got to change back to Lindy Ruff. I think we got to go back to this head coach. We're going to have Justin. Justin's been writing for all kinds of publications. I know he writes for Forbes, the hockey news. He writes, he's written with the Stan Fischler report. We love the Stan Fischler report, obviously. He also writes for CNBC, which I thought was interesting. But he's got a lot of opinions, and a lot of it is on the Devils. So I want to bring him on for a bunch of other reasons. But it looks like we're going to talk about the coach. We're also going to talk about the CBA. So I'll leave that for when we talk about him. But Sam, what do you think? What do you think about Lindy Ruff? I've been yelling this whole time, and I appreciate that you give me this platform to yell as much as I want. But I want you to tell me, what do you think? You're on that Sunday podcast. You got 3 other people to jump over. Now it's just you and me. Give me the Sam Wu opinion.
I think actually, I don't know if it was you or Julie. I think it was Julie that said this. What do you have to lose with Lindy Ruff? You get a veteran coach. I would expect speed. I would like to see what he did in Buffalo when Chris Drury and Danny Briere was a 1-2 punch, and Thomas Vanek. When the new NHL started after that year-long lockout, that's the kind of coaching I want to see and results out of Lindy Ruff. You've got Jack Hughes. You've got Nico Hischier. You've got speed. And you potentially have 3 first-round draft picks, but we're not sure yet. There's a COVID.
Either way, you're going to have 2 extra draft picks in the next 2 years.
Yeah, but but a couple years, if it doesn't work out, you fire him. That's all. In terms of Dan Rice, look, it's no secret that the Devils ownership group, Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment, I think the acronym, they're going after the New York Mets, although rumors have it that Stephen Cohen is the lead favorite to win the bid. But I don't think that had anything to do with anything. And I like Dan. I respect his opinion, his analysis. I think Tom Fitzgerald, I think the biggest move was to take that interim tag off his title. I think that was a brilliant move, especially in the situation that the New Jersey Devils have found themselves possibly not playing for 9 months. Do you want to go with the unknown coach? Go on. Okay, but you know what? You're going to pay him a big bucks. What, to sit around till January? Not going to happen. You want a veteran coach there. But you could debate if Lindy Ruff was the better choice, but at least Devils fans think of this in a positive manner. Tom Fitzgerald played in the NHL, and he was a pretty good player. And he's been around, and he's been an assistant GM in Pittsburgh, in New Jersey, was part of Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. If he wants Lindy Ruff and he wants his guy, you're in charge, Tom. But just remember, you got a short leash if this doesn't work out with Devils fans.
That's one thing I will say. I will say that the Devils going through this GM search like they did and to a lot of people. And also, I do want to say this. The people that the Devils interviewed are not out of being a Devils employee. I think that there's a very large possibility that there's still a ops type role that's going to get. Maybe Mike Gillis, maybe, there's other names out there. So I wouldn't say that Fitzgerald is, lo and behold, the leader of this room. I think that they need somebody who's going to control everything, because there's a lot of, we learned in that Larry Brooks report, whatever you want to take out of that as true or untrue, there's always a semblance of truth in every report. So I would say that we have to at least understand that there's a lot of cooks in this kitchen. There's a lot of decision makers. And I think that has to be one person in charge.
You know what? I think there should be one person in charge, Nick. And I think that interim tag changes the whole dynamics. Nick, I think you should look at your phone. Because one of the great things, everybody on Facebook Live, YouTube, Periscope, the magic of being a producer is you can just override and just shut the co-host down. Because I think I should get Justin Birnbaum on CNBC. He writes for CNBC, Nick? The hockey news?
Yes. It's on there. It's on his Twitter account.
Wow. Well, Nick, I'm going to go get Justin right now. And, if your choppy internet becomes even choppier, guess what? Use sign language because you're talking to Facebook Live.
Sam, I only know one piece of sign language, and I don't think you'd appreciate it if I use it on this podcast. So I think I'm going to stick to English if it's okay with you. We're still working out. I moved into this new house, and we're working out the kinks of this internet. Unluckily, I don't know. We've tried about 6 different ways to do this, and there are kinks in every single way. We now have multiple possible ways to do this, but we're still testing those out. So I will apologize to the New Jersey Devils fans. We understand that you have a high expectation for the Let's Go Devils podcast, and we will live up to that expectation. But what I can't make up for in a little bit of choppiness every so often, I can make up for in some fire takes. I can give the fire takes. I can continue to just keep coming at you with bold predictions. And, I know Dan brought it up or maybe it was Julie who brought it up. Actually, I think it was Julie who brought it up. about this being a for now hire and kind of holding water for Ricard Gronberg. And I said I would like that. That's something I would really, really enjoy if that's actually true. But why? A lot can change in 3 years. And the best laid plans are always have kinks in them, and they always come with their own challenges. And I think that planning ahead for a coach in 3 years when he's in Europe, like what happens if Colorado becomes open? A team that looks like they're a Stanley Cup contender for 10 years. Or what if Edmonton becomes open and they contact Gronberg and he gets to coach Connor McDavid? What about Boston, who's had just a very good ownership, GM, head coaching situation since Chiarelli left? And there just seems to be a lot that can change in between now and 3 years from now to make this a for now move that's only meant to be temporary. So that does scare me, but I would enjoy that being the plan. Sam, I see you're back.
I'm back. I was on the phone with Justin because last week felt bad. And I was like, yes, Nick's internet is sunbathing in the heat down in Florida. So we're working on it. But anyway, on the Nova Product Design Hotline, he's written for the Hockey News, Forbes, Stan Fischler Report. And then I saw CNBC, so we'll ask him. We have Justin Birnbaum on the Nova Product Design Hotline. Justin, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, Justin, obviously we got some breaking news, which changed our content list. But there's a lot I do want to talk to you about. I do want to get to the CBA, but I do want to get your first initial reactions to the Devils reportedly, according to Kevin Weeks of NHL Network, reportedly hiring Lindy Ruff.
It's funny. Every time you ask me to be on this show, it seems like we're getting breaking news. So I must be some sort of good luck, or in this case, bad luck charm, according to the fan base. I don't want to say anybody's overreacting, but it's not like they just pulled Lindy Ruff out of nowhere. Yeah, it seemed like there were some more qualified candidates out there, and I probably would have put money on Lav personally. But I mean, Lindy Ruff coached over 1,500 NHL games. He's taken a team to the Cup. He had a 50-game season. What was it, 4 or 5 years ago with the Stars? I know that he's taken a lot of criticism over in New York with the Rangers, and it's funny to see like Rangers fans celebrating his departure. I mean, it's never a great sign for an incoming coach, but could be overstated. I mean, someone that really is a veteran presence in the league, and he's been around for a while. He knows what it takes to win. He's coming into a young, very impressionable team that needs kind of that guiding veteran presence a long way. Now, I mean, on the other hand, you sit there thinking, like, how's Lindy Ruff, 60 years old, going to connect with 19-year-old Jack Hughes? So, I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, I was honestly hoping now to get more of a look. I thought he did a pretty good job taking over for Hines mid-season. And, obviously, it's hard to shed that interim tag. I know Tom Fitzgerald just did it, but it wouldn't have been who I predicted, but, he's an experienced guy. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, the experience is something I like. I like bringing a guy who can come into the room and point out what he's done in this league with a lot of young players. So there's that. I do agree with you there. Some of the stats and some of the advanced stats on his defensive performances is what worries me, especially on a team that needs a good PK Subban and has seen Will Butcher and a couple other defensive players just kind of not live up to what we thought they were going to live up to. So I do worry when it comes to that. But again, these things happen. So I do want to ask, and I asked Dan Rice this earlier, do you think that the Devils were waiting for the CBA to get signed, or do you think this is just a coincidence?
Probably a coincidence. I mean, I don't see how too many provisions in the new CBA or the CBA extension rather could really affect coaching search. I mean, the Devils, and I'm sure we're going to get into this more, I don't want to call them benefactors of the CBA, but they're one of the few teams that's kind of going to have an advantage going in just because, they have a ton of money coming off the books. And also, I mean, when you talk about bad contracts, they really only have two, in Corey Schneider and PK Subban. And obviously Subban still has a chance to turn himself around and earn his money, but it's probably a coincidence. I mean, it's interesting that all these guys have been available so long and now they made the decision, I mean, I guess they were just taking their time vetting out the process. It probably had a lot to do, if I had to guess, with their decision on Tom Fitzgerald. Because you have to figure that if Fitzgerald's coming in as the GM, that Lindy Ruff is his guy. I don't think they'd go out and get Lindy Ruff just for Fitzgerald to take the top job and not be okay with it. So maybe it was some sort of concurrence between those two processes where they wanted to really understand what they were getting in Fitzgerald, and I mean, they've had a pretty extended look at him with him being in the organization and in the job, but I don't think anything more than a coincidence.
That's fair. But let's talk about the CBA. There's a lot going on with the CBA the past couple of days. We're getting a little bit more and more coming out. It sounds like that there's some key dates that have been agreed upon, including a late September, early October Stanley Cup Finals, and then an October 6th NHL draft. But first, I just want you to tell me, what is the importance of getting this labor piece?
Well, I mean, it goes without saying, anytime you can push a lockout or a work stoppage further into the future, it's incredible. I mean, it derailed, in the 90s, and 2012, 2013 was obviously shortened. It's great. I mean, you don't really see labor peace agreed on, when it's not right against the deadline. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic really changed everything. And, with a ton of uncertainty in there, they really had to get a deal done to protect the league's future for the next 2 years. And I think it's a great thing. I mean, you never want to see the cap flatten. I mean, you always want to see more money going into the players' pockets. But obviously, when you have a 50-50 revenue split, the owners have to do what they need to do to protect themselves. And it's interesting that with all the interest that's going around escrow, that they were kind of able to meet in the middle and get that done. I know Artemi Panarin, as recently as 2 weeks ago, was really calling out the system. And I'm curious if he's pretty okay with the agreement that came. But supposedly it's going to be pretty high next year. It'll be around 20%, but it'll come down slowly and it'll carry over from year to year, so that they're going to keep inching back towards replacing the revenue loss this year. But ultimately, it seems like it'll be a fairer deal for the players in the short term. I mean, the biggest thing with the CBA, it depends who you talk to, is I'm excited to see the NHL go back to the Olympics. Obviously, they have to agree to the IOC, but I completely thought that was off the table, and there was no way that was coming back for the next two Olympics. And here it is. Well, I guess the owners really wanted to get the deal done. We're able to concede that.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited about the Olympics. Admittedly, I didn't watch more beyond USA Olympic hockey last time, just because everything else was kind of, it was less than what we were used to. So seeing those stars is going to be a lot of fun again. But you're talking about the money of it all, and the money is what I'm really interested in it, because I feel like the Devils are once again set up to have a big offseason if they want to. I don't know what they want. And the Lindy Ruff hiring, I mean, that tells me that they're not looking at do another long rebound because he's 60. I don't know if he'd sign on. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he would just sign on just to have this as a job for a couple of years and ride off into the sunset and teach a bunch of young guys. But if I'm Lindy Ruff, I'm thinking that the plan is to win soon. So I think that the Devils can make some moves to make themselves look pretty good. And in my opinion, I think that this flat cap sticking to where it is going to help the Devils more than maybe any other team in the league. What are your thoughts on how this salary cap sticking to what it is now is going to help the Devils?
I mean, there's really two ways they can go with it that I see. The first is obviously the flattened cap is going to really affect off-season spending. You know, it's just not going to be the frenzy that we've seen in the past. And, you know, for a team like the Devils, I guess it's a good thing because, you know, when you look at some of the top free agents that are going to be out there next offseason, and, you know, maybe they don't go for Alex Pietrangelo, but, you know, maybe they're going further down the list. Maybe they want to go after, Torrey Krug, for example. These guys are not going to be able to get the value they would in normal offseason. Teams are going to be more reserved. They're going to be conserving more money, and the prices are going to drop. I don't necessarily know if they're going to drop too much, but, you know, it could theoretically benefit a team like the Devils who do have that little extra cap space that can go out and say, hey, we can offer you this amount of money. A lot of teams are worried about their cap flexibility going forward. So, I mean, there's a lot they can do with that, because a lot, like you look at the Rangers, for example, the Rangers now we're counting on that increase. You know, it's going to be hard for them to make any sort of move. But the other way they could really go is the Devils are incredibly young. We know that, you know, they're built around the Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier core, and they're in a position where teams are really going to want to unload salary and regain the flexibility that they don't have. So Devils really want, they could bite salaries here and there and hoard picks. I mean, it's like you said, is the Lindy Ruff hiring something that means that they think they can win in a year or two and get back to the playoffs sooner rather than later? Or, you know, is it kind of a long-term thing? I think that was, you know, you bring on a veteran coach like Ruff, you know, you want to keep him in place for a while, especially since, you know, Jack Hughes is 19 and Nico Hischier is 21. You want to have the same coach there for a while. You know, you look at it this way, Jack Hughes is 19. He's played 60-something NHL games. And he's going on his third NHL coach. And I don't know if there's data that backs that, but, you know, anecdotally, that's not good. You know, you don't want a guy, you know, changing up so many times in the early part of his career. I think Jack Hughes, especially when I've spoken to him, has not sounded like a non-confident guy, an incompetent guy. But, you know, when you shift in too many systems, when things are moving around, when you can't establish that consistency early on, then, you know, I'm sure on some level it rocks your confidence. No one's bulletproof. But it comes down to those two routes. They want to flip it around, you know, throw some money at free agents and take advantage of the opportunity that they're fortunate that they can do that right now, or they want to use it as an opportunity to really just stack prospects in the next few years. The pipeline looks pretty good now. I mean, Tom Fitzgerald really, really did some great things at the trade deadline. I believe the Hockey News, I did the Devils, prospect pool for the Hockey News when they had the Future Watch issue in May. I think off the top of my head, the Devils prospect pool pipeline is ranked something like 5 in the league. I think it was 5. So, you know, they have talent coming. I mean, Ty Smith will probably be ready to play next year finally. And Nolan Foote, obviously, is a really high-end prospect. But if they're willing to absorb money from a team that is pressed against the cap and is willing to sacrifice picks to get flexibility, then, you know, that's a route they can go to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they have the picks and all that. And that kind of like leads me to another point is I'm curious. I'm seeing a lot of comments, you know, Michael's asking about, yes, only line A, trade money, etc. So I want to ask you, what do you think would be the Devils' best approach this offseason? Do you think that they should dabble into free agency? Maybe a Torrey Krug, maybe an old friend in Taylor Hall has to look at what he's going to make next season and change his tune? Because I know he said that no matter what, he wants the long-term deal. So maybe the Devils could get a good price on him. But just looking at it, do you think that it would be better for the Devils to go into free agency and get someone for free just for cap space? Or do you think that they should hit the trade market a little bit harder, knowing that there's teams who are going to be desperate to get out of some of these contracts?
I say hoard assets. I mean, just because in the long term you maintain your flexibility, and let's say you do want to go get someone who's a high-end player and has a kind of high price tag, the more picks you have, kind of the more ability you have to target them in the trade market. I mean, there's a few marquee guys that could pick up this offseason. Taylor Hall is obviously going to be a free agent. It'd be really interesting to see him come back to Jersey. But, I mean, maybe with a regime change, he'd feel differently. But, it seemed like not that Taylor Hall's time in New Jersey ended bitterly. It was just a matter of it became this immovable force where Taylor Hall was headed out of New Jersey. That was just not going to be the team he wanted to be. I don't want to say wanted to be on, the team that he needed to be on at this point in his career. And I think he worked out in some degree by ending up with Arizona because it did seem like a really good fit with him. And, obviously when the 2014 playoff kicks off, maybe, we'll get a better picture of that. But for me, I mean, the Devils have come a long way in terms of really stacking assets and reorganizing their pipeline. And, I know that they want Jack Hughes to be the star of tomorrow, but realistically, I've been traditionally high on Hughes, and I think he's going to be a great player. And I think a lot of what I saw from him this season kind of spells that once he gets over, some of the early career stuff. But, I remember how good Sidney Crosby was when he first entered the league, and I don't think Jack Hughes has the benefit of reaching that level immediately. Maybe like I said, I believe he's got star power in him, and he will get there eventually. But it's not like next year or the year after the core stars of this team are going to be their finished forms. And stacking assets means, adding more prospects. Maybe those guys aren't ready either, but it also means creating flexibility so that when you can finally deem this team ready, you can go out and make a move for guys that can come and supplement that cast. And, you can make a move in free agency, but, if you hit or miss with a guy, it's a tough thing. I mean, look at what's going on with PK Subban. PK Subban, by all accounts, is a great defenseman in this league, and he just didn't have a great year in New Jersey. And obviously they got him by trade, but he, they're counting on him a lot to really kind of recapture what he had in the past. And, if you go out and spend that kind of money in free agency and you're stuck with a guy like that, set you back years.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. Taking other people's contracts instead of the ones that you negotiated yourself is definitely a risk. I just see some of the players that are out there, and I know Laine is one that's been in our comment section. What are your quick thoughts on Patrick Laine, just out of curiosity?
I love him as a player. I think he's great. Strong on the puck, a really great scorer. I mean, if the Devils had him, that would be incredible for them. But I'm hard pressed to think Winnipeg would let him go. I mean, I know that at some point they're going to have to make some tough decisions, and I know that he's a premier player in this league, and he should be paid as one. And it would take a haul to get him. I think if the Devils had a chance to go get Patrick Laine, then you have to go get him. It's not a question, but it then becomes how much you're going to have to overpay to get him, because Winnipeg would be hard pressed to give him up. He's truly a stud player. I think he'd fit great with the Devils. I mean, think about if you paired him with a guy like Jack Hughes. That line would be incredible. I mean, the playmaking vision of Hughes with the scoring ability and the strength of Laine. I'm sure plenty of Devils fans get excited just thinking about that. And, you see in the comment section, it's a nice thing to kind of kick around, but stranger things have happened. So let's not rule it out. But it's hard to see the Jets giving him up.
That's fair. Before we let you go, Justin, last week I brought you on because I read a couple pieces of yours, and I was really impressed with just the old school style that you bring to writing. And then I read this one piece about Nikita Gusev that you wrote. It was in the Hockey News, and it was just that old school magazine style, that Sports Illustrated style, the Hockey News style, you kind of see the pictures and it kind of interweaves a story and it takes you on a journey. So, can you just tell me about the reporting that went into that Nikita Gusev piece, just talking about the history of the Devils and these types of players, these overseas players, and how that impacted them now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for all the kind words. I appreciate it. This was a really fun one to report. It actually started, I can't remember if it was training camp or the early part of the season, where I was at practice, and John Hines was always kind of a loud guy in practice, and you hear his booming voice everywhere. And I saw him dealing with Gusev, and it was just like talking to him. He was making all these weird hand gestures and kind of signaling him and stuff. And I asked him about it after practice, and he kind of went into a little bit of a deep explanation about dealing with international players, and how it's kind of this patchwork thing where in some cases using hand gestures. They have varying different levels of English skills. There's a lot of video work that goes into that. A lot of different things, and it kind of sparked my interest. I started to go after it. I honestly didn't intend for it to be just solely about Gusev and the Devils at first, but the way it worked out, the Devils had this rich history working with international players, and that really dates back to Lamorello and his tenure. And they were one of the first teams to really embrace bringing Russian players over, and it benefited them. I mean, obviously, they took home the cup in '94 in large part because of Lamorello's efforts and kind of his openness of working with international players. I mean, there's a huge stigma in the NHL at the time. I spoke to Jim Villano from the Detroit Red Wings, and he actually, right before I started talking to him, he had done this documentary on NBC Sports called The Russian Five. There's a lot of overlap between the conversation we had and what ended up in that documentary. And he was telling me, like, people were like really saying things to him about, including or going after international players and taking away jobs from hardworking Canadians. And he gave me a quote that was extremely similar to what he said in the documentary. And he even told me that the person who said it to him is still involved in coaching in the NHL to this day. So I kind of went down this journey and, learned a lot of different things about, how teams work with players who don't have the necessary kind of English proficiency or cultural understanding to just hit the ground running when they get to the NHL. With the Devils, and what's funny is later on it came out that Gusev, his English was actually a lot better than he let on. I mean, I spoke to him a couple times in training camp. I would go approach him and say, hey, I'd really like to talk to you about this. And he politely had said to me a few times, I'm sorry, I don't really speak English that well, so I really don't talk to the media. And I was like, fine. But obviously, videos came out later where he was in the locker room. He spoke pretty okay. The Devils did a lot of things. They had Patrick Elias work with him, giving a perspective of someone who came over and made the transition from overseas. It was great that Sergei Brylin, who was in Binghamton as an assistant coach, he was basically on speed dial. I know him and Gusev spoke on the phone a few times, just kind of go over, if he was comfortable or not, and, whether, he needed anything. I know that John Hines told me that there was, or I believe it was Brylin told me himself, there was one time where he was conferenced into a meeting to translate. But the interesting about Gusev was his ability to understand English is actually very good. It was just his ability and confidence to speak it back. So it was an interesting journey, and obviously somewhere along the way, mid-season, Gusev really turned his game around, and he started to look like the player that the Devils got as advertised. I mean, back before training camp started, I was in a press scrum with Martin Brodeur, and he was just beside himself. He's like, I can't believe we got this guy. He's incredible. He's a star player from the KHL. He's obviously with Vegas, and they didn't even deploy him. But yeah, I can't believe we got this guy. So, Gusev really, really picked it up. And I think there was definitely a correlation with him finally getting comfortable, being overseas. I mean, I don't want to say it's easier, but maybe the short-term shock is larger for guys who come over when they're younger, and the long-term shock is a little more difficult for guys who come over at a later age. Like Gusev, 26 or 27, I can't remember off the top of my head this year, but, he spent his entire life in Russia, and it's not like he came over to play juniors here or anything like some players do now, or came over when he was 18. So it's a new experience for him. I know he came over with his wife and daughter, and ultimately it worked out. It's kind of a shame that it couldn't happen quicker because he really proved to be a difference maker for the Devils as the season went on, and maybe if that happened earlier, they could be a few games up in the 2014 playoff. But I think he's going to be a really strong player for them to have over the next few years, and I think it all starts with the Devils kind of embracing the mentality of throwing every tool in the bucket at getting these players acclimated and comfortable, and using any kind of learning resource they can to get them where they need to be.
Justin, that was great. Taking us in that piece and in the mindset of the piece it was a fun journey to go on with you, and that was a great piece. It's on the Hockey News. You got to go read it. It was one of the better pieces I've read. I didn't write it. He wrote it, but it was one of the better pieces I've read on the Devils in quite a while. Justin, I appreciate you coming on, talking about this, talking about more breaking news and breaking news. I appreciate you taking the makeup date with us today, and you got to talk about a myriad of different things. So Justin, remember to follow him at Just Bernie on Twitter. I'm sure he writes everywhere. So we just got to give out the Twitter account so they can see you share all the articles there, Justin.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure, and hope we can do this again soon.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you on. We got a full summer to talk about hockey, Sam. So we're gonna have to bring some new names, some old names. We're gonna bring some names you've heard of. We're gonna bring some names. Sam, I've been looking around Devil's Twitter, and I've noticed a couple people who are up and coming, and I've been talking to them just on the low, and I'm telling them, like, get a couple things under your belt. Let's work on it, and then maybe we could do what I like to call, Sam, a home and home, where we do something for them, they do something for us, and then everybody, so you're going to see some new names on this podcast, and I think it's going to work out really well for you, for the fans, because it's opening your eyes to people you might not have seen otherwise, and I think that's good. I think giving voices to people is how you learn the talent that's out there. So I'm excited to be a little cog in that machine. I think Sam, that's what you did with me not too long ago. I caught your eye, and then you plucked me out of obscurity, put my face on here, bad internet at all, and now we're here.
Well, Nick, this is how it all started. It was actually Beer Baron. You caught Beer Baron's eye, and then we tend to call you a lot to be a guest on the Let's Go to podcast on Sundays. And then one thing led to another, and then we're just like, we like to innovate. That's what we like to do at the Let's Go to podcast, is innovate and go live. Not fake live. So, but wow, three great guests.
Yeah, this would go a lot less with the choppiness if it was fake live. Yeah. But yeah, that's okay.
Live, it would be perfectly edited.
I will say this, Sam. We've been doing it this way for a while. The podcast over video, but still in separate places. I've noticed a lot of the very large conglomerates of sports people are having their own troubles putting together their podcasts when they're used to just being in a studio and press and play. Now they got to do it over Zoom or over other Skype and other video chatting services. They're having their own issues, so it's
Oh yeah, you just moved into now you're built. Let's tell the audience. Those are on Facebook Live, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube Live, Twitch. You are now in the process of taking a big undertaking of building the Pucks and Pitchforks blog studios in somewhere beautiful Florida. A bunker serves as two things. One, live Devil's podcast, and two, survival during this pandemic. Boredom.
Yeah. I'm going to need
Yeah. I mean, and I just want to let you know, the audience, I'm even in the process of building a new studio as well to get ready for the Devils season that's about 6 months away. So we have plenty of time, but it's going to happen. And when this Devils start back up, I don't know if you saw what I posted on my personal Facebook page. My defense against COVID, the full shield mask, because I have no problems wearing that. And I'm also developing in the lab a Martin Brodeur helmet with P95 cartridges or whatever on the side, breathing apparatus, to go to Devils games. And I've already consulted Nova Product Design, the fine folks that power our podcast, to see if you can make that shield protective so I can go to these games like a big Devils fan, but be safe as well. So we're always trying different things. And by the way, we found the mother lode in we're cleaning up the old studio. The mother, a Ranger suck confetti. And all you have to do to get it, and offer ends tomorrow. Email Sam at letsgodevils.com, a screenshot of you subscribing to the Primetime Radio Network YouTube channel. And you email me at Sam at letsgodevils.com, your name, address, and I will personally send it out to you. And then there was this one guy that just like emails me, doing the thing, and like less than 36 hours later, he's like, "Oh yeah, I haven't gotten it yet." Well, just remember, buddy, I know you want it, so I appreciate the enthusiasm, but Nick, I have to safely place these Ranger suck confetti in the envelope, wait 2 days, and then seal it, and then mail it out. Because we want to be safe about this. You never know. Just never know.
I do have to say, Sam, I didn't appreciate your other podcast, your Hockey on Tap podcast, chiming in to your Rangers suck confetti giveaway and giving their unwarranted opinion on this. I don't know what you're doing employing Rangers fans on these things. I think that you should know by now.
You're a Primetime Radio. You're a Primetime Radio. The corporate conglomerate of the Let's Go Devils podcast and State of the Fan Address. We are an equal opportunity employer. So we're trying to employ diversity so we can feel better about ourselves that we're not Ranger fans. That's all.
Listen, at Pucks and Pitchforks, I'm an equal opportunity Rangers hater. And I hate all Rangers fans the same. But when they come in mentions that I'm mentioned in, Sam, there's going to be fisticuffs between podcasts, and you know what we're going to do? We're going to have it live. Why don't we have it live? We'll put it on the air. Fisticuffs between Hockey on Tap and the Let's Go Devils podcast. Challenge, one-on-one.
Well, speaking of which, okay, so Matt Freudenberger says, I need Rangers suck confetti for my wedding. Look, Matt, we are for hire the podcast, all right? Matt and Facebook Live, Freudenberger from Berkeley Heights. If you hire the podcast, it comes with Rangers suck confetti. We will do it from your, what's that thing called before the main cocktail hour? That's it. We will broadcast live at your cocktail hour, and we'll bring a player as well. That's the kind of stuff. We're doing bar mitzvahs, everything. Everything has a price, right?
Quinceañeras. We'll do the Let's Go Devils quinceañera. We'll do proms. I know proms were canceled this year, but maybe we'll do a Let's Go Devils prom for all the ones that missed out on prom. We're for hire, Sam.
Yeah. Now, Michael Hay, yes, lightweight, free shipping. Yeah. See, I'm going to take it was my wife actually educated me that you can't just stuff Rangers suck confetti. So I'm taking like this like nano scale and actually figure out how much it weighs before I seal it and ship it, because the last thing I want to do is chip our wonderful viewers and listeners where they have to pay 3 cents or something like that because it's overweight to receive the Rangers suck confetti. Michael, yes, 2 big phones, no trapezoid. I don't know what you're talking about. Tampa Bay, the Tampa Banner jersey is fine. I don't know what he's They're crazy at Facebook Live. We are the most commented Devils podcast in the history of Devils podcast. And according to Chico Resch, the great Chico Resch, he says that we have the most organ of all podcasts, a hockey organ of all the hockey podcasts out there. So we're achieving big, big goals. And as we're approaching 75,000 lifetime downloads and over 500,000 views on all major platforms, that's how we're building it, Nick. And it's been a fun ride. We're halfway through the year.
It's been a crazy year. I've been with the podcast for a year, but, Lindy Ruff, it's now trending nationwide. So a little Devils news trending as I'm seeing. So it's a very interesting time. We have some thoughts on Pucks and Pitchforks already up. Me and Vinny have both already written some. So go to pucksandpitchforks.com to get my initial thoughts. They're probably a little convoluted because I wrote them while planning this podcast and angry as all heck.
Yep.
But Sam, we had a lot of people who don't hate the deal. So once again, I will reevaluate after talking to the experts who know what they're talking about. So I have to go back. I have to reevaluate. Maybe I missed something, but I just know that Lindy Ruff was not the one I wanted. So, but we had a fun podcast. We stayed with them for almost 2 hours. We got lots of talk in. I bet we gave the viewer more than they expected. They probably thought they were getting all Lindy Ruff, but we went on side notes about prospects and the CBA to kind of ease your mind. There is some good news out there, Sam. Even if you hate the Lindy Ruff signing, there's some good news. And the one thing that hasn't been figured out that I'm excited to see is who his assistants are going to be. And also, the Devils haven't officially announced this yet, so I'm wondering what they're waiting on with that. So I've seen multiple reporters, including Dan Rice, got it confirmed himself. So I'm waiting on the Devils to make that official confirmation.
Wow. Well, once it breaks, tomorrow, whenever, check us out. Let's go Devils.com. At Let's Go Devils Pod on Twitter, at Pitchfork Puck on Twitter, and go to Pucks and Pitchforks blog.com. Oh, any last words?
Hashtag Hall of Maven. Don't forget, Hall of Maven. Hall of Maven.
Till next time,
Devils
fans.
in the hall.
Let's go Devils.